Okay, Reggie, you mentioned TCO. We all know all the new faces for the Vikings by now. Brand new coaching staff, top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that means brand new scheme and philosophical changes to the playbook. Reggie, Vikings have held a handful of OTAs out in the beautiful confines of TCO out in Egan. I know you've attended a few of those practices, and I want to get into maybe a sleeper or two that's caught your eye up close and really being able to see these guys move around, do some real work on the field. But first, real quick, any news, notes, observations you've gleaned from your time out at TCO this week? Could be an interesting press conference, a specific player, or even just the overall new vibe with a brand new coaching staff now running the show.
Well, they continue to talk about how the culture is different.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Kendricks in particular, he talked about how, you just don't have success running a fear-based organization. And he felt like that's what the team has been under Mike Zimmer. And it was really telling. But what you see is a lot of guys who are loose, running around, having fun. They're like little kids out there. That was kind of what I kind of experienced when I was out there checking them out. I was talking to Kwesi, and he was just super excited about, what the team is building and how the team is just kind of fitting together. It seems like they took some of the older pieces that they had already on the team, brought in some new guys that kind of have a similar spirit and energy that they're looking for. And everybody's just enjoying each other, enjoying the experience so far. And, the defense, they were talking about how they feel better moving into next season with the new scheme, that they're going to be better, trying to stop the run. And the scheme is going to help put their best players in position to succeed on the field every Sunday. And so that's just really cool. And also, KJ Osborne, a lot of chatter around him, and possibly having a receiving core that, you got three, pseudo wide receiver ones. It's funny, Osborne just kind of, really blossomed last year. He had the catch in overtime against Carolina to walk it off and send them home into the bye week with the win, and that was fun. But what's been crazy is all the chatter about, what he could do this season. And with Kevin O'Connell having the type of up-tempo, spread it around, fun offense that he's bringing here to Minnesota, could be possible that we see three receivers if Thielen stays healthy. Like, he was on a tear last year, 11 touchdowns. It was like all that guy does is score touchdowns. If he comes back and bounces back and is the guy that we've come to expect, wide receiver 1B, 1A, whatever you want to call him, and then you got JJ, you could see a receiver core, which is awesome to think about, but you could see a receiver core with 1,000 yards receiving between JJ, Thielen, and KJ. And that's pretty scary to see, but Osborne looks really good so far in camp.
Has there been anyone else who's caught your eye out at practice, someone flying under the radar, not being discussed about a ton yet, that when you've watched them move around or just got to see for the first time here, up close and personal in real life, stood out to you? Give us maybe Reggie's sleeper or two from OTAs, just a guy to watch out for that you think could make some noise during training camp later in the summer here in about 5-6 weeks.
I'll give you a couple guys. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
We'll go BC Johnson, who, was probably a star in the making before going down with that injury. But he looks good so far out there, and he looks comfortable. He looks excited to be out there and ready to contribute. And how about Jalen Twyman? Just a guy that is just happy to be here. You know what I mean? Like, he's just he looks 15. He looks all of 15 years old out there. But the dude is probably gonna be a beast for the Vikings, just at least for depth purposes. But I think he looks comfortable being out there, coming back from what he's dealt with. And I think there are high hopes for what he could bring to that defense. They're not going to rely on him to, be that guy, with guys like Dalvin Tomlinson and Horrible Harry out there. But imagine Jalen Twyman coming back from what he's been through to come back and learn from guys like Dalvin, learn from guys like Harrison Phillips. Like, I think the sky's the limit for this guy. And I think, him being out there is just a testament to him and his perseverance. And then also him being out there and ready to contribute is something that I'm looking forward to out of him.
For me, the intriguing factor going into training camp is that front seven, because first of all, you got a whole new base defense. And then also you just got a lot of young moving parts that we don't know about yet. I think one of the under radar guys for me, I mentioned him last week, so I won't go too in-depth on him, is James Lynch. I think he could push Armon Watts for that third starting defensive lineman spot. But another guy in the front seven, we just don't know a lot about him yet. We just haven't seen him. But yet he was a third-round pick out of Pittsburgh last year, was Patrick Jones. And Patrick Jones come out of Pittsburgh. His last 2 years had 17 and a half sacks, 24 tackles for loss. He was all ACC at Pitt. I think he's got a lot of potential. And again, just being able to get him some real playing time. Now, he's not going to be with the ones, no, but during training camp, is he with the twos? I mean, remember, za'darius Smith coming off a back injury, 30-plus years old. Danielle Hunter's landed on the IR the last 2 years. Could this be the backup? Could this be the third guy in the rotation next to maybe a DJ Wanham that gets a lot of time and looks standing up as that 3-4 outside edge guy? I just saw what he did at Pittsburgh last year come out of the draft. I thought it was an intriguing pick with a high ceiling, and we just don't know what he can bring to the table because Mike Zimmer just didn't really play some of these younger, although be it early round picks, third and fourth round picks like Chaz Surratt as well. So that's a guy that it just intrigues me going under the radar because with this 3-4 new look, this new base defense, there's so many variables and moving parts, so many X factors that we just don't know what it's all going to look like until it shakes out. Ed Donatel starts to throw us a couple breadcrumbs and we can see a few wrinkles as far as different packages, sub packages. We know Brian Asamoah, third round pick, he's going to be in the mix there too, flying around on nickel, probably pass situations. And then BC Johnson, love that you brought him up as well. A guy that, again, we talked about it earlier in the week, supplanted as the wide receiver 3 before KJ Osborne really blew up. He goes down on the IR. Him, Amir Smith, Marset, Jalen Naylor, all kind of fighting for that wide receiver 4 and 5 spot. Going to be really fun to see how all that shakes out here as OTAs continue, and then we get more into the thick of training camp in the summer. Last one here, talking Vikings OTAs. I know you're not a doctor, Reggie, and you don't have the Adam Schefter inside sources on this stuff quite yet, but I'm curious about any injury updates, specifically to Andrew Booth Jr., Irv Smith Jr., 2 big names that are expected to contribute to this team in a variety of ways. But first, need to grind their way back from injuries. Have you heard any new updates at all? Anything to glean from maybe just watching them work out and move around, and when we could expect them back in the mix and start competing for some serious playing time here in the near future?
Well, I think they're both coming along. Andrew Booth Jr. is kind of working to the side right now. He's not kind of mixing it up with the team just yet. But I know they have high hopes for him coming back at some point soon. Eager to see when it is that he gives it a go. But, I mean, he's dressed. He's out there from the injury that he dealt with coming into camp. But Irv Smith looks back. He looks like he's back.
Here we go.
I saw him over there with Kirk Cousins. They were kind of working some routes. The other day he was kind of working extensively with his tight ends, because, he really didn't have Irv last year, and his guy Tyler Conklin is gone. And so, he's really having to reestablish a rapport with his tight end unit and really kind of figure out who's going to be his guys on that unit. And Irv Smith looks like he's ready to contribute and ready to be, the guy moving forward, and he looks pretty good out there. No, I will say, though, going back to what you were saying about Patrick Jones and on that defensive side, I was talking to Kwesi, and we were just kind of chit-chatting, about other stuff, and we were watching some of the pass rushers work, and out of nowhere, Kwesi just says, "This guy's so good, man." And he was talking about Mike Smith, the pass rush specialist coach for the Vikings. And so, looking at Mike Smith's bio, because Kwesi was really complimentary of him. He came over with Mike Pettin to the Vikings from the Packers. And what was really cool about this whole thing is he coached Rashawn Gary, who we talked about yesterday. He coached Preston Smith. They both had 9+ sack seasons last year. And, when you look at a unit and you see the development of guys like, Armon Watts, DJ Wanham under Andre Patterson, with Andre Patterson having the type of, cachet that he does about developing defensive linemen. Like, the dude is known as being one of the best at developing pass rushers that we have. Like, they had Everson Griffin come back last year, and before, he went out with the personal things that he had going on. He was one of, if not the best pass rusher that the team had last season. And that was all because of what Andre Patterson does to get those guys in position to excel on the field every game. And now he's in New York. He's with the Giants now. And they brought on, Chris Rumph is the actual defensive line coach. And then you add a guy like Mike Smith, who's the pass rush specialist. And you talk about him helping develop guys like Patrick Jones and Lynch, and more development for Armon Watts and more development for DJ Wanham, and you're just excited. I know Kwesi was excited about him just kind of getting his hands on some of these pass rushers, and so I think it's going to be interesting to see, as you mentioned, Patrick Jones kind of bringing him along and seeing what he does under Mike Smith's tutelage next season.
Yeah, a lot of fans pretty salty about letting Andre Patterson go.
Oh, absolutely, and I understand.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the best in the biz. Stats don't lie, and I think bringing over a guy like Mike Smith, though, and seeing what he did with Rashawn Gary, a guy who was picked with the 12th overall pick for the Packers a few years ago, a little quiet his first year or two. People are starting to scratch their head. Man, is this a bust here? Top 12 pick, a lot of high expectations. But to see him explode last season gives Vikings fans, or should anyways, a lot of high hopes for all this young, untapped raw talent up in this front seven, because when you just look at Rashawn Gary and his development from year 1 to year 2 to now year 3, and what he's been able to do, just getting better every season, hopefully Mike Smith can do the same and hopefully fill those big shoes again left by Andre Patterson. Vikes are going to get a few days off here. They wrap up OTAs with 4 straight practices from May 31st to June 3rd. Rest assured, Reggie and I will be back here for all the spine-tingling action from practice. We talk about practice? What are we talking about?
Talk about practice.
Not a game.
Not a game. Not a game.
I love.
Not a game.